Oh, howdy, howdy. This is Cubbypotamus, and today we are going to talk about making rocks. Okay, now, in a way, what I really do is I make pretty rocks, right? Right, the same things that are in these rocks are in those pots. And we gather clay from the earth, we fire it, and make it vitreous, make it connect. And that's just a lot like the rock cycle, right? You have the mountains, they weather down into sand and clay and lighter, right? And then as they get buried, it heats up towards the center of the earth, and eventually, you start with sedimentary rocks where they fuse together, add heat, and they fuse, and that's like metamorphic rocks, which is kind of like porcelain or stoneware. And then where stuff melts completely, and that's like glaze, right? Right, so essentially what I'm doing is I'm getting the clay and I form it and I heat it up and I make rocks out of it. And it's a little different than making rocks in the earth because, well, different forces act on them, right? Here we don't have the tremendous amounts of pressure and time that you'll find in the earth, but we do have a lot of heat, and they are similar chemical wise, right? Ooh, that's a pretty rock. Right, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about glaze chemistry. Crackle glaze. Now, the biggest constituent of glaze, or glass, because glaze is a glass, is silica. It's usually anywhere from, 45 to 70% of glazes. Silicon dioxide, SiO2, also known as quartz, hardness of about 7, melts at over 3,100 degrees, and composes about 10% of the Earth's crust. And has a hardness of about 7. That's the main body of, well, most glazes, right? And then you have the stabilizers, chiefly alumina, Al2O3, hardness of about 9, also known as corundum, rubies, sapphires. It's a pretty cool rock. It's very tough. And that's your stabilizers, right? And that melts at over 3,700 degrees, right? So silica, main thing, melts at 3,100, and alumina melts at over 37. Well, then how is it that we fire pottery at like 1,800, right? And glazes and whatnot. Well, we need something to help the melting out. So there we have, hey, acarena. So we need to melt that silica and alumina, and that's where what we know as fluxes come in. A flux is something that you add to a solution or something, right, to make it melt. And we have, different fluxes to bring the melting temperature of all that silica and alumina down. Things like sodium oxide, potassium oxide, magnesium oxide. Okay. Are things we add to clay to make melt. Yeah, so glass formers, stabilizers, fluxes, and now suppose that what would happen if I don't know if the lid fits too good on there, which is unfortunate. Okay, now think about this. What would happen if your clay and the glaze expanded and contracted at different rates or temperatures, right? So say the glaze expands more than the clay does when it warms up. Well, what's going to happen? Well, it's going to crack. It's going to craze, right? See the little cracks in there? That comes from making a glaze that expands more than the clay does, right? And if the clay expands more than the glaze, then the glaze will flake off. When you get the little cracks and expands too much, it's known as crazing. And when your glaze flakes off, that's known as shivering. Now, if you'll notice that most of my pots don't have the cracks in there, and there's a reason for that. Because I make it so. Right? I adjust my glazes so they will expand and contract at the same rates as my clay body, which eliminates the crazing and makes the pot a lot stronger. Right? You can make your pottery up to 3 times stronger by having good glaze fit. Well, and how do we do that? Well, we do that by using fluxes that make the clay or the glaze like expand less or more, depending on, to fit your clay body. Little test piece there, didn't turn out too well. I would have got this little guy. Ooh, oh wow. Yeah, this glaze didn't agree with my underglaze too well. There, right? So fluxes with like sodium and potassium, they expand a lot. And they're very shiny. This has a lot of sodium in it. Pretty glaze, but this will craze later because this glaze expands more than the clay. And you have other fluxes like lithium and magnesium, which make the glaze expand less, right? So you have to balance your glazes to match the clay bodies, right? So you have glass formers, stabilizers, fluxes. Well, how do we get all the pretty colors in there? All right, well, there's colorants as well. Just different oxides, right? You put different atoms in there, whatever. Copper, right? Copper oxide is green, and if you put it in your glaze, it'll make the green glaze, like that one. Yeah, a little brook trout. Now, right, so like copper is green, greenish blue. Cobalt, you've heard of cobalt blues, that's a deep blue coloring. Chrome makes a John Deere green. And then there's things like rutile and use a lot of boron. See that bluish white in there? That's boron bluing, which can work as a glass former, a stabilizer, and as a colorant. Boron's kind of a magic one. And this is a commission for a yarn bowl. So boron is very nice. And now you'll notice that most of my glazes are very shiny, but you have very kind of dull matte style glazes too. And a good matte glaze is not unmelted. It's crystallized, right? So it isn't shiny because it doesn't melt. It's shiny because you fire it and hold it long enough for crystals to form. This glaze, this glassy stuff, is amorphous, which means it doesn't have a crystalline structure. It cooled too quick. Okay. Those are just some, I don't know, basic things, I guess, about pottery. This was Cubby Potamus, and I'll just thank you so much for watching.